Last night I was talking to my mom and dad about my ideas to save the world from chaos. Now, they are both two super intelligent people. They are my mentors, and they are two people that I look up to the most. However, they said, David, your ideas are not going to work because you won't be able to get the governments and big business to implement your ideas. And I thought to myself, I know we only need to get the government to implement it, and I thought everyone else did as well. Now that made me think. I know the strategies I talked about in my last video on this topic are sound, and I thought the implementations were clear and, of course, easy to understand because I could see them in my mind as clear as you can see the lights flashing in Las Vegas. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show in this video how truly easy it is to implement my strategies, and more importantly, how it will save money, how it will save time, and how it will save lives. And to remind the listeners right now that during my last video I said we need to provide society with all the vital services such as food, shelter, communications, electricity, water, gas, etc. And to have the governments around the world pay for these services. And to not simply hand out a blank check to these businesses as they've done in the past. Now, each of these processes, think about it, can be done literally in hours and save us all of us, from chaos, looting, rioting, unnecessary deaths, and preventable societal destruction. And when we get on the other side of this virus, we will still have a functioning society with all of our infrastructures still intact. So first, let's deal with the vital services. These services need to be provided, and of course, the service providers need to be paid. And here's how we can make that happen, literally, as I said, in hours. Take companies like AT&T or Rogers or the gas company or the electric company. Now, each company has a long list of customers. What they need to do is provide their federal government, and yes, I did say the federal government because this needs to go to a single source. They need to provide a file that has the customer's name, address, email, phone number, and of course the amount each customer pays. Each provider sends that to the government, and the government pays a discounted amount to the provider at the beginning of each month. The provider receives the money they need to provide the services. And the customers, well, they get to ride out this virus while still being able to make food, have shelter, communicate with loved ones, and entertain themselves until this pandemic is resolved. We also have to have all landlords, business owners, governments, banks, mortgage companies, etc. suspend the need to collect payment until this pandemic is over. That way, no one loses and no one gains again until this pandemic is over. And as I listen to the news, I find some things a little bit difficult to understand. Companies like airlines do not need a bailout. They are not flying planes. They only need a minimal amount of money to maintain the integrity of their fleets. They don't need a staff to pay for or gas to buy, and they don't need to stay in luxury hotels. So why do they need a bailout? Now we also need to think of the vital employees that are needed, people who are working in policing, hospitals, emergency services, food workers, delivery people, etc. They They are putting themselves at great risk and must be paid more. The same way people who work in other hazardous jobs, such as oil cleanups and so on and so forth, mining and stuff like that, they get hazard pay. This group of people needs to have a significant increase in the amount of money they are being paid. Otherwise, who is going to keep us safe? Who is going to police our streets? Who is going to prevent people from looting? Who is going to feed us? This way, businesses still get a government handout, but it also benefits society. So when you think about it, it's a win for businesses, it's a win for the customers, and of course it is a win for the government. So now let's deal with the non-vital services such as manufacturers, retailers, malls, restaurants, widget makers, etc. Through no fault of their own, they had to lay off their workforce as mandated by the government. And that, of course, has put hundreds of millions of people out of work without notice, and worse, without an income. Very few households have money to last even a few weeks. And this has already been over 8 weeks. I believe more people will die from starvation, famine, massacres, and deaths unrelated to the coronavirus than will die from the virus itself if we don't do something right now. Now, just to recap, we can stop that from happening, and here's how. Each business, whether they have 1, 10, 1,000, 100,000 employees or more, need to provide the governments with one file that contains the name, social insurance number, or ID number, address, phone number, and amount each employee is paid on a weekly basis. These are computer files that can be put on a drive and sent to the government literally in minutes. The governments now take those files and pay a discounted amount to each person. Discounted because that person has no need for travel, no need for parking, no outside food, etc. Therefore, they need less money. And I know that the government can write a computer script in at most a few hours and load it into the accounts payable files for easy tracking. Now, all of these monies must be forgiven by the government because it wasn't the employer or the employee or the government's fault. And when you think about it, when you really think about it, what is being suggested right now is well-meaning. And it is really a better decision than some of the decisions that are being made right now. Think about this. Having people individually apply by the tens of millions every week is a nightmare for both the governments and the employers trying to manage it. Imagine trying to process or attend to each individual need. It could have a greater negative financial impact than the virus itself. And while they are being processed, people are dying. People are looting, rioting, and people will be committing mass murders. The solution can be done in under a day with the right commitment by all parties. Now, there's also the non-vital services such as furniture companies, clothing companies, office supply companies, and the like. They will not go out of business because they will still be able to provide their products through online delivery services and continue to make an income and provide employment. Now, my suggestions have these effects. Instead of processing hundreds of millions of individual applications, the governments only need to process tens of thousands of files from the businesses. They can easily handle that load because they are doing it right now. And as I said, the governments can create a script that shouldn't take more than a few hours. And if they have trouble, I can help with it. I will have my programmers categorize the files, submit them, and ensure the hundreds of millions of starving people get the much needed relief they need in days, not in weeks, and sometimes perhaps never. And please, we don't need task forces to think about this, or focus groups, or lobby groups, or strategizing to implement these suggestions. All we need is cooperative actions right now. And as I said, I'm even willing to offer my services for free. Now, let me summarize what I'm suggesting. All businesses that provide vital services will submit a single file that contains all the information of the consumers who need to be supplied with services. And the government will pay that amount once a month until this pandemic is over. All businesses will provide the governments with a single file that contains all the important information so that people can get paid once a week or twice monthly until this pandemic is over. Now, have I repeated myself? Yes. But please keep listening. Because all financial institutions and landlords need to suspend asking for payment until this pandemic is over. All the monies will be forgiven, and they will not need to be repaid back to the governments. Because it's not like we haven't lent foreign governments or big businesses billions of dollars only to write them off when things went sideways. This is emotional because it matters. Now, why do we need to do this? Because as I was driving down the streets today, I now see stores, office buildings, boarding up their businesses, thinking it will protect them from looting when the riots begin. It won't. That and so many other reasons are the reasons we need to implement these measures now, because it means lives will be saved, businesses will be saved, infrastructures will be saved, and we will have a world that is not destroyed by civil disobedience once this pandemic is over. And the governments, they can verify and validate all of these files after the pandemic is over so that they can punish cheats and those trying to profit from this life and death situation. Here's something else we don't need. We don't need daily talk sessions telling us about how bad it is or how many people died or how many masks we need. We need money immediately in the hands of the people that are dying from starvation, malnutrition, insanity, and spouses that won't shut up. Sorry, I just thought we needed a little levity. And we also need to start doing daily talk sessions telling us about how many lives we saved today, how many scientists are working on a vaccine, how close we are to a solution, and perhaps watch reruns of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Cooperatively, we can save our world from everything bad and realistically make everything good. So please tell all governments or those in power to do one of two things quickly. Implement the measures I've outlined, or quickly find other measures that save lives beginning right now. I'm David-T-Rosen. Be safe, healthy, and vigilant. And remember, happiness happens on purpose.